Hi there, my name is Gretchen Van Esselston, and I am the Education and Programs Director here at the Specialty Food Association. I'm so pleased to welcome you all to this webinar in our new Booth Camp series. I want to mention also that at the end, we'll be talking about some of the other webinars in this series, and we'll give you some links so you can sign up for those, so you'll be ready if you're exhibiting at the Winter Fancy Food Show in January 2024 in Las Vegas. But if you're watching this on demand and you're getting ready for a show, rest assured that all the information you hear today is really about any trade show you do. Fancy food show, running your booth, and being comfortable talking to buyers and the press. A recording of this presentation will be available in the Managed Purchases section of your SFA Learning Center later today. If you have any questions for our wonderful presenters during the webinar, please use the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar, and we'll get to those questions at the end. They love questions, so please do ask. Don't be afraid to ask any questions you've got. So now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Today we'll have two speakers. Each will speak for a little bit, and then we'll bring them together and we'll all do Q&A together. So after a decade-long career in marketing for NASCAR, having built the agency for champion driver Bobby Labonte, Julie Buscha did the unthinkable by leaving the industry she loved to follow her food passion. She bootstrapped and launched the innovative relish called Slawsa. It's Slawsome. It's now in retail stores, restaurants, and stadiums. Julie's background in publicity has gotten Slawsa featured in hundreds of national and local media outlets. With a passion for paying it forward, Julie proudly serves on the board of directors for the Specialty Food Association. And so, reared in the family business, Doug Renfro has spent the majority of his career working in a number of different capacities at Renfro Foods. When he was in college, he weighed out all the spices for daily production, and now he's the president of Renfro Foods, where he oversees new product development and helps manage a number of different strategic and administrative areas of the business, including sales, purchasing, legal, and information systems. After a 7-year tenure working outside the family business for a large multinational information services company, Doug rejoined Renfro Foods in 1992, and his career has just burgeoned since then. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Doug, who's going to talk to you a bit about running a trade show booth, and then we'll go over to Julie. So once again, please enter your questions anytime in the Q&A, and please join me in welcoming Doug Renfro.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a couple of stories just as an example of you can never tell what will happen at a trade show. The one thing you know is that good things won't happen if you're not there. So I'm a strong advocate of attend, be all in, be present the entire time, and you never know what will happen. So on the next slide, many people get confused. Upper right-hand corner, I'm the one on the right. So just to clarify, and I don't like doing hokey things at trade shows, but we had found that if we brought Miss Texas to shows occasionally, that buyers who wouldn't necessarily be nice to me just kind of melt into a puddle if I offered to have Miss Texas sign an autograph for their granddaughter, their wife, their friend, whatever. And my point here in terms of not prejudging is at one point, the organization approached us and said, Chevrolet is going to stop sponsoring this contest. I mean, the program itself, the photos. Would Renfro's want to do it? And I wanted to say that's crazy, we're too small. But instead of saying that, I asked the cost. It turned out to only be $700 incrementally more per year than we were already spending. So for 7 years, all 300 public appearances a year, Miss Texas handed out photos with our logo and photos of our product at the bottom to all these future little salsa buyers. And on the bottom, that is me and a full-on Canadian mounting costume and our Canadian distributor. I've been to Canada 30 times. We started when nobody knew what salsa was, and they certainly didn't think they wanted any. And we just kept going up there and being nice and begging. And by dressing as a Mountie and looking like an idiot for 3 days, they brought everyone who would come into the show to see the moron from Texas over in the Mountie costume. I won Vendor of the Year. We sold our biggest sale ever in Canada because they just thought it was so interesting. They would come talk to me. And just an example of, don't be afraid to take risk out there at a trade show. And more photos and short stories on the next slide of what's happening. A friend of mine is part of a 94-year-old mustard company, as we're an 83-year-old salsa company. And we're the two Americans that show up in Canada and go around the country trying to sell our wares. And I believe in work hard, play hard. So you can see we were not particularly working hard there, but we'd spent the previous 2 days You get to speak for 7 minutes. You update 2 or 3 reps at a time as what's going on with your company, your products, your brand. Picture doing that 48 times in a row over 2 days, and you'll end up looking like this. On the right upper hand, you've got my cousin Becky continuing the family tradition of looking silly in costumes at the Canadian trade show. Left hand lower corner, all celebrities think they want to have a food company until they find out what the numbers are. So we get to meet some interesting people. Usually once I explain the math, they wander off. But that's Patty LaBelle holding our sales director's baby at a Cahey Tree Life show back in the day. She actually wandered off with the baby and they had to chase her down and get it back. But that baby is now playing high school volleyball. And lower right-hand corner, that is myself and my 2 cousins I run the company with now. We were at the Vegas Fancy Food Show, and that's a fancy booth. We spent many decades having a little $200 pull-up booth. It's really about your program and your products and your presentation and your persistence, not the fancy booth. So don't be intimidated if you start with a little pull-up booth. We did that many times, and I have a story about what we did post-pandemic initially in that as well. On the next slide. Yeah, that's Sinbad. You meet some interesting people. Look down in the lower right-hand corner is how glamorous it actually is. You know, when you're sitting there just talking and selling and begging and pleading and sharing your story. But another example of not prejudging, I was asked to enter a contest for a fancy food show. I didn't feel we had a chance to win. I didn't think it was a good idea, but finally I gave in to my ad agency. We spent $100. We entered our ghost pepper salsa. This is like 12 years ago. As I suspected, we weren't even a finalist. What I had not realized is that one of the judges was in charge of picking which item would be on the Good Morning America show the next day. And we had our new item on 1 full minute of television, Good Morning America. That's worth $50,000 to $100,000 in terms of publicity. When they tried to move on to the next item, the host was in the background. You know, the people that get there at 3 a.m. to stand in line, they were all waving their mouth about how hot it was and eating and talking about it. And it was really cool. It was very valuable, and we almost missed it by me being a little bit negative. So next slide, you can just stare at it while I ask myself and answer about 28 questions. Don't get carpal tunnel trying to write it all down. You can watch this later, slow-mo, and I'll be at the next every fancy food show until I pass away. So you can always stop by and ask me. So should you visit a show before you exhibit? Absolutely, if at all possible. A salesman and we exhibited at a show one time in Miami, and had we gone to it first, we never would have exhibited. We would have saved ourselves about $5,000, because sometimes people, they don't necessarily lie, but this show might not be quite the way it was described. And make sure you know your product well, know your competition, be nosy, use Google. The shelves are full of products, many similar products, and have an angle. Don't just say, you know, we have great salsa. Say, yeah, I know you have a lot of salsa. You don't have black bean and pineapple at a value price, and our SRP is lower than the top 4 specialty brands that you have now. Have your ammunition ready. Have you told your customers you'll be at the show? Set an auto reply. When I do a trade show, and if you email me during that time, the auto reply will tell you where I am, what our booth number is, and it'll usually suggest that you bring me a Diet Coke and a gluten-free snack, and I'll usually get about 4 Diet Cokes per show. What will you do with your leads? You know, follow up or don't go. I've seen people wander around for several months after a trade show holding their stack of leads, and I think they're just afraid somebody will say no, and somebody's absolutely going to say no, but you won't get to the yeses if you don't go through all the no's. Be aware of scams. It doesn't happen often, but if you've got 22 SKUs and somebody says they're wonderful, they want a sample of every single item, they probably are just stocking their pantry. Valid buyers usually they're going to want maybe 2, 3, 4 SKUs to start, not 22. How do you separate the leads that you're going to get? Friends in the industry, frankly, are your best value. Go to every reception that's at the show, make friends, buy somebody a drink. We all help everybody else because we've been helped so often. Unless it's a direct competitor, you're probably going to find a lot of friendly, helpful people at the show. And also, when people come to your booth, be nice to everyone. It's the right thing to do. Plus, you never know that the name tag may say, you know, warehouse supervisor, training manager, but his brother might be the owner for all you know. And being nice to everyone, it comes back. And I say, I don't know that I believe in karma, but I sure do see it happen a lot. And how do you give out samples? For one thing, hide all your cards. And those of us who still have analog business cards, hide them, because they'll all be gone the first 2 minutes if you don't, with people just scooping them up. and qualify your samples, offer to ship samples. The most important, significant buyers at the show rarely want to carry things around. They would like it just to be at their office when they get back. And how do you describe your product in the directory? Capture all the categories. For us, I'm going to check all the boxes: salsa, dip, appetizer, things that are red, everything that could be categorized so that you have a better chance of people coming to see you. And when I say, what should your booth say or indicate, remember, it could be fancy and you pay somebody a lot of money to bring it over and set it up from Chicago every year. But after the pandemic, I was concerned that there wouldn't be that many people for a while. So the first 2 shows after the pandemic, we got black carpet, black walls, and a white couch and some blow up pool toys from Amazon. And our booth was so strange looking that we got a ton of traffic on a relative basis, but we didn't spend a lot of money when there weren't that many people there. Be sure to know how to read the badges. You'll normally have a color scheme where you can glance at the color and tell if it's retailer, distributor, broker, whatever, vendor. But again, be nice to everybody. I'm a vendor. Sometimes people won't give me the time of day. I'm a consumer. I buy things. I post on Instagram if I find a new brand that I like. So just be nice. You will have unqualified attendees occasionally. If you realize they aren't that interested in you, they're actually trying to sell you frozen warehouse space in Omaha. You politely get them to move on, tell them they can follow up later. Never be rude, but you paid a lot of money for your booth. You want to be talking to potential buyers. And I would never hire a broker at a show. Don't make key decisions there. If somebody's pressuring you to make a key decision on the trade show floor, there's probably a red flag there. How do you deal with the show pressure? Tequila? Just kidding. Real answers here are boring. Get some sleep. It's not a dorm frat party. Eat half a turkey sandwich versus 12 fried appetizers that were at the booth next to you, and walk the show a bit to keep your mind fresh. Now, I always ask, should you walk the entire show? You should. It's not realistic when there's 2,000 booths, but at least look ahead of time. These days, the apps that we have for shows are so great. You can do your research ahead of time. And if you're in the sausage field, look at all the other sausage companies and go see what they're doing, what's new in the market. Look where your friends are. Make yourself a walking path. The educational opportunities are good. This webinar, classes, the fancy food show in particular is full of educational opportunities. Take advantage of those, and the networking alone makes it worthwhile. Will you maintain the right attitude? Avoid being dragged down. I've done shows where the booth next to me had somebody with their face stuck in a newspaper for hours, and they'd occasionally look up and announce how slow the show was and then go back to reading the paper. And people pick up on that. If they're approaching your booth and you look bored, they'll keep going. And have high energy. You can talk to your compadres back at home. I didn't fly 2,000 miles away and spend all this money to talk to my sales director. I can talk to him anytime. I want to be on the lookout for everybody who might want to know about our brand, more, buy products from our brand, or that I can even help to get closer to their goal in the industry. And stay till the end. I have the luxury now. I can pay some other people to do that. But years ago, if it was just me, I would stay, or my sales director and I, on one show at 4:30, closed at 5. At 4:30, I was looking around, helping get the booth taken down, but watching. And sure enough, someone came up, asked me a million questions, and became a large Copac client for the next 5 years. If we had left early, that wouldn't have happened. They might have found me later, but again, you paid thousands of dollars to be there. And then on your notes, please take good notes. It's embarrassing to call or email somebody and say, hey, I've got your card, but I can't remember why. And everything I tell you that's stupid, it's because I've done it. And then last thing I would say is, in this day and age, there's no excuse for not following up. And if it's a really hot lead, go to your hotel room before the evening meal and email the office or whoever does these things, or yourself when you get back, and make the samples from your company arrive before everybody else's. At the end of a trade show, within 3 weeks, these people have a mountain of samples. You want them to get yours first, particularly if it's really important, if you were excited about it. So with that, I think I avoided my 12-minute timer going off in our ears collectively, and I'll turn it over to Julie.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to try to do the same and keep it within my 12 minutes. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I always see is that when people are at their booths, they're looking for the buyers, they're looking for the distributors, they're looking for those key badges to sell, but they're not really looking for the press badges. And I think the press badges for the fancy food shows have that gray tone behind them. And remember that when as press come to these shows, I want to say there's anywhere from 500 to 700 independent press there at the shows, or maybe even more than that. This is such a great opportunity to get your products and more so your story out in front of them. So it's very difficult for me to let any of them walk by unless they are a press that has absolutely nothing to do with my product. So I have a relish if I see someone from BevNet, a beverage publication, come by. I'm not hassling them, but I am definitely making eye contact and smiling with those who are the press, because again, I don't 100% know necessarily who they are by their badge. So if someone from, say, Martha Stewart Living comes up to you, what do you say? First, I think it's really good to understand the basics of media. You have to pretty quickly assess who they are. Are they with a health magazine? If so, your pitch to them is going to be health focused, assuming your product is also health focused. If they're coming from a business publication, you're going to want to pitch business angles. Maybe you're like Renfro Foods, that is a multi-generational business. Maybe you've hit the 50-year milestone or longer. Maybe you have some sort of really interesting social component of your business, such as, for every case we sell, we will donate a unit to, a certain a food bank or organization, or we donate 5% of our profits to World Central Kitchen. Things like that are things that business publications and business media are interested in. The business media is probably not interested in that your product is all natural, fat-free, cholesterol-free, gluten-free, really low in sodium, woman-owned, that sort of thing. They're not as interested in the product as they are in your business story. There are publications that will come by that could be very women-centric or men-centric in terms of their readership. So say, think about a Men's Health. I'm going to pitch both of them very differently because I have a product called Slawsa. For the women-centric, I might be a little bit more health engaged and talk about how it's a great add-in to recipes. For the men, I might say, hey, for like maybe a Men's Health, I might say, hey, we are a healthier alternative to your grilling repertoire. I think it's really important to assess who the media are. And they're really no different than you in that they have a very specific beat and they cover a very specific angle. Anytime I see someone with a freelance badge come by, I get super excited because freelancers tend to be people who work on multiple publications, and you never can tell what a freelancer does. And sometimes if you don't know their name, it's okay to ask, hey, what publications or what media do you cover? It's okay to ask those questions, because when they respond back, oh, I really only cover the cheese industry, or I really only cover this or that, you might be able to make the connection to them. You might not be able to make the connection to them, but then you can talk to them in a way that either you're going to be beneficial to them, or I've been known in the past to say, hey, and they might be a customer of your product independently of the publication that they're writing for. But I have always been known to say, hey, if you're doing a lot of really neat stuff on sustainable seafood, there is a company right around the corner that has a plant-based salmon or things like that. I think anytime I can refer other members to the media, it gives them a very positive outlook on you, because you are in essence helping them with their story or with their coverage. And those things tend to come back later on. The other thing you're going to see walking the show floor, and they might be under freelancer is more and more influencers and bloggers are coming to the shows, and some of them have a huge impact. So don't discount an influencer who may only have 30,000 followers now, because in a year's time they could have 2 million followers. They're just kind of getting going. I think it's also important to think about, as you customize your pitch to whomever you're talking to, just realize that some media are worth waiting for. You may be a smaller or a more regional brand, and by getting an Oprah to cover you now may not be as beneficial as getting them to cover you 2 years from now when you have much more distribution. So just be aware that as you're developing relationships with press on the show floor, you are really starting relationships with them, whether they be short-term, whether they be long-term. And then the other thing that's kind of important is timeliness. So when do you pitch urgently and when do you pitch timely, and kind of knowing the difference? So I'll give you an example. An urgent pitch would be something that is trending now or in the news. Say, for example, and we have a cabbage-based product. Say, for example, 2 weeks before the show, cabbage was found out by scientists to be some sort of a must-have. I guess maybe scientific studies have found that cabbage is now a cure for, Parkinson's. That's not necessarily true, but just for example, I think if you have that ingredient and something is in the news and you have that ingredient in your product, it is a really good topical thing to talk about when you're talking to media, because they've heard it in the media and now they can tie a product with that key ingredient to something that they want to promote. A lot of media, and going to timely, you will find that some media work on seasonality, on holidays. Magazines work 4 months out. So the Winter Fancy Foods show, for example, is the perfect time for me to be pitching my summer grilling themes. The Summer Fancy Food show is a little late for summer grilling themes unless someone's doing content that is not appearing in magazines, but rather online content. So I might want to think about more of a tailgate angle at the Summer Fancy Food show, because if someone's coming up with, if I'm talking to a magazine, if I'm talking about summer grilling, they've already got that content already set in their magazine. So just being considerate of when magazines are pushing out certain content and when they're working on certain content is really important for them to know. Just an FYI, October, November is a really interesting time, because that's when a lot of major magazines put out their editorial calendars. You can do a Google search for Men's Health Editorial Calendar 2024. And if they pushed out their editorial calendar already, it will tell you with every single month that they're coming out with, these are the things that we're working on. So I can look ahead and say, oh, in April, they're coming out with a deviled egg article. So I want to make sure I'm reaching out to Men's Health at the Winter Fancy Food Show to promote Slawsa being a great mix-in for deviled eggs. So I think it's really important for you guys to go find editorial calendars, do a little bit of homework on the front end, because when those publications, especially the magazine publications, come to the show, you can say, oh yes, and you have something happening in July, or you have something happening in August, and this is why my product is perfect for that. Next slide. So whenever you're pitching media, whether it's writing out an email, whether it's pitching them at the show, it is super important that you are and I apologize, that is a UPS man at the door. It is super important that you are creating a hook. What is that one-liner that's going to come in and get them to talk to you? What is that subject line that's going to get them to open the email? Media are constantly getting pitched probably 50 times a day by various companies. And the more creative you can be in that subject line or in that initial outreach to get them to come visit you, that's key to starting the relationship. The pitch should also be something that is super important and focused and not too wordy. Whenever you send your samples and you do the follow-up, you can have much more detail in that follow-up with the samples, but the pitch should also be something that doesn't have too many fillers and is super focused. So the pitch, how can you help them, and how can you, and I often like to do the work of the media, so I will constantly pitch ideas to them, and maybe even put together, here's 4 other vendors just like me, and this is why we would be good for this specific pitch. So the more work you can do on your end, the better. Next slide. And this is something that I know is going to be covered in future webinars, but just super important that you have a very specific pitch sheet that not only do you keep in the press office, but you keep at your booth that you can easily hand to the media. This is very different from the sell card that you give to buyers. It is something that is very media specific. And then you know, if you're doing pre-show outreach, just be super judicious about who you're reaching out to, and being very highly targeted. If there's 700 media coming to the show, there's probably only 20 that I'm really, really interested in. So sending a blanket email out to 700 people is not smart. It can kind of get you on the banned list. And just making sure you're utilizing the press and media center for your news releases, and you know, making sure that you're getting out word, and utilizing the resources of the Specialty Food Association. I probably did not keep within 12 minutes, so I apologize.
Julie, we forgive you. All good. There was so much valuable information. So as we go into our Q&A period, send those questions over, put them in the Q&A. Now is a great time. As we get ready for that, I would just want to mention a couple of webinars that are going to be coming up in this series. So we have our How to Prepare for the Winter Fancy Food Show Deadlines and Logistics webinar. And my colleague Megan is going to put that in the chat. I think she just did. Great. So this is a webinar. It's only for exhibitors for the show. So there will be a process where you'll register for it, and then we'll go ahead and approve you for it if you're an exhibitor. And then we also have our PR 101 Bootcamp webinar, which is really a lot of it's the one that Julie alluded to. It has a ton of information from our PR team on all the offerings that SFA has to help with press as well. And that is a recorded webinar, so you'll get a link immediately after the recording via your exhibitor communication. So you'll get that from us as well. So those are 2 great ways to get some more information. So now we have Slawsa and Slawsa, and I would love to hear from all of you about questions that you might have. But before we get into that, Julie and Doug, so you heard each other speak. Did anything come up for you that you wanted to get off your chest before we get into Q&A?
Yeah, Doug had mentioned you don't want to prejudge buyers, because I think everyone has had a single store location buy. Like, I've had a single store location. I'm thinking, well, you know, how much business is that? But I've had a single store buy a whole pallet, you know, for a summer program. So you never want to prejudge buyers, but you never want to prejudge media, because even though, again, their badge may say one thing, they could be working on a book. They could be working on all of these other things that are huge, or they can just be connected within the industry beyond your wildest dreams. And I've had some pretty amazing media as a result from just, happily talking to people at the fancy food shows.
And Julie hit the nail on the head with the freelance comment. I had a freelance reporter, writer approach me, and she mainly had been working on Atlas Obscura, which has nothing to do with her current assignment, was for Atlantic Monthly on an article about the definition of salsa. And I ended up getting a nice quote in there, a very national, prominent magazine. But she's a freelancer. She just goes from story to story.
Yeah.
And one thing
Freelancers are the best.
What's that?
Absolutely. Agreed. And one thing you said, Julie, definitely resonated with me as a former journalist. Like, once you get someone who is a source for you, that is gold, that relationship. Because when you are on deadline and working on a story, I know that I can go to Julie and be like, do you know anybody who might have this? Oh, and by the way, let's get Slawsa in there while we're doing it. It is, if you can be a friend to a journalist, I mean, it's so valuable. So let's see, a couple things are starting to come in. So here's a question. Any specific things to note to have in your press release?
Well, first of all, if you're at the show, you definitely want to make sure your booth number is at the top corner of the press release and not embedded within the body of the press release. And that way, if someone sees like whatever your title is, and it's a strong title, that they can make sure they know to go directly to you if needed. And the press release, my press release, or not necessarily my release, but my pitch sheet is very different from a lot of the press releases or pitch sheets that are available in the media center, because I pitch holiday themes, I pitch angles. Mine looks very different, and I'm happy to share what mine looks like with anybody. If you guys want to send me an email, jbuscha@slawsa.com, I can share you what that looks like. A lot of press release, just make sure it's something people want to know and it is newsworthy. If you're just now, if this is your inaugural fancy food shows, that could be a topic. If you're celebrating this or that, that could be a topic. If you've got a very new product that is super different in the market, that could be a topic. Or if you've won a Sophie, again, that could be highlighted. But if you don't really have anything newsworthy, I would probably hold off on doing a traditional press release and then focus on your pitch sheet.
Fantastic. That's so generous of you to offer to send that out to folks. I would definitely take Julie up on that, and maybe you'll even share it with us and we can get it out to folks who attended, if you wouldn't mind. That would be great. So here's a question. So it's about balancing traffic at your booth. So how do you handle it sort of when the pressure's on and you feel like there's almost a line to taste your products and talk to people? How do you manage that?
It's an interesting thing that's going to happen. I guarantee you, you're going to wait the whole show for this one buyer from a massive company. And the minute you do, this farmer's market that got started yesterday is going to ask you 8,000 questions. And out of the corner of your eye, I'm sure Julie's very good at this. You're watching, you're trying to be in the moment, but you're watching, but you don't want to be rude, but you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've been waiting on Bob here for 2 days. I'll be right back with you. If you have multiple people in the booth, you can have a system where if I tap you with my foot or say the word, Slawsa, come rescue. But if you're by yourself, sometimes you just got to do your best. It's frustrating and it's absolutely going to happen.
Yeah. That's really tough. I will say that for those who are looking to sell you items, it is okay to give a look. They should understand that you are there to sell, and it is okay to say to them, look, I do want to talk to you, but I do need to get to this person. But again, Doug has referenced 2 different buyers coming, a high priority buyer, and then again, maybe a new buyer who's just starting out. So I love that idea of tapping your foot to your helper for them to take over so you can get to the other one. I definitely try to make eye contact with both at that time. Hopefully they're both kind of sitting there waiting, and it's kind of a tough nuance to do, but you can gradually talk to kind of try to finish a conversation when as talking with another. And it is a multitasking thing where you're, you know, making sure you're scanning their badge, or, you know, you're getting their information to follow up so you can get on to the right person. Yeah, it is a tough thing.
If you really want the most important person to come, just go to the restroom. They'll come while you're gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see. So let's talk about the pitch itself. So someone comes by, it's someone who you know you want to talk to. What do you want to make sure you include sort of in your patter? And how do you work with, do you get them to taste first? Do you talk about the product first? How does it all kind of go down?
Well, when I'm pitching media, you know, I try to start with whatever hook it's going to be. I had a gentleman, Jared, who does a lot of TV media for like the Fox station up in Minneapolis. And my hook to get him to come on in, well, first of all, Minneapolis is a huge like bratwurst sausage eating area. So I said, Jared, now I know you love a good bratwurst up in Minneapolis. You need to come over and give this a try. And then we started the conversation from there. So I try to, whenever I try to look at whatever their publication is or wherever they're from, maybe there's some sort of a connection with either like a type of cuisine or regionality, or, you know, and that brought him in, and we got covered on, you know, Fox right after the Summer Fancy Food Show last year of his favorite finds that he had. But again, I think it's really good to find a different hook. It's for the media, it's not necessarily the same hook. And I would say even for the buyers, it's not necessarily the same hook to bring them in.
Yeah, exactly. Your goal initially is to get them in and engaged. Then you can move on to your secondary goals.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And do you encourage them, Doug? So say you have your whole product line out there. Do you say to them, like, do you like smoky? Do you like super hot? Do you sort of guide their tasting, or just let them go for what they're interested in?
We're a little lazy, so we will probably have, you know, just 3 or 4 items. And often we'll have an extra hot and an extra mild. And just for amusement purposes or to keep them occupied, people always love to dare their friend to eat something hot for some reason. So always have something that's unusual, and they'll dare each other. They make a little game out of it. You can film them for Instagram later, you know, whether it's too sour, too sweet, whatever. Have some variety out there, and know that some people aren't going to taste anything and some people taste it all, but most people are going to have a sweet spot, so to speak, and ask them what they prefer for sure.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit about samples. So one of the questions we always get in our preparing for the show webinar for people who are just beginning to exhibit is, how many samples do I bring? How many, you know, 1-ounce cups can I expect to hand out at the show? It's so hard because every product is different. Any tips for those folks?
I mean, I think Julie and I are both heavy breakable items, so I bring 0. As far as people wandering off with them, it's a bad idea. They're going to hurt themselves or be annoyed when it breaks. We will ship to their home or office all day long in a beautiful box that's going to have our branding on it. We prefer that. If they want to take something away, we just discourage that. But they're not going to taste nearly as much as you think they are. So we found a bottle or 2 per item per day has always been plenty for 30 plus years.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of like the on-site demoing to those who come by, it is like taking what my response is not going to be the same as a cookie or a cracker or, you know, maybe a beef jerky, or, you know, they're all going to be super different. But in terms of, you know, full size samples on giving away, again, I've got that same breakability as Doug. And I think what we both try to do, whether it's media or whether it's retailers, as he mentioned in, you know, on the retail side, is to prioritize who you're getting samples to. I will definitely say on the media side, I like to get approvals before I send samples. Especially if you've met them at the show and you've agreed, hey, yes, we'll send samples, we'll get it to them immediately after the show, then yes, there is a priority, because sometimes some of them are on deadline, they need it ASAP. Some of them may not need it for a few months, but I still want to get it to them, but I can always make a mental note to follow up with maybe even another sample jar later. But if you're cold pitching media, having not met them, in very rare cases do I say send samples, because they're getting samples all the time. They don't know who they're from. They're getting a cold pitch. You know, I would say you're not going to have a very high probability of getting media from just sending cold samples without their approval to do it first.
They probably do what I do. Every day I get unsolicited samples. I put them in the main office and say, hey, whoever wants this, take it.
And Doug, you mentioned when you were giving your talk how, the buyer doesn't want to carry it with them. They just want it on their desk when they get back from the show. How do you facilitate that?
I get the physical address as quickly as I can from them. And if there's any sort of hook, we have coffee cups, hats, shirts. We have cool swag, nothing stupid. And many times they like it. And if I can send something, we have those stress squeezies, little miniature jars. All the kids love to play with those. And if they got 5 kids, I'll send 5 of those. Anything to get the physical address out of them, because the branding is going to impress them when they get it. In our case, when you open the box, my grandmother's looking at you and it says there's a little bit of Mrs. Renfro's in every jar, ... Not literally, makes them laugh and smile, but I have to get that to them. But yeah, sometimes if they're too evasive, I'm quite good at Google and LinkedIn and the tax databases. I can find just about anybody. Freaks them out a little bit, which is also good.
Yeah, my funniest story about sending post samples was at the most recent summer show. A very big media person came by and we had a great conversation, and I know it's going to lead to something down the road. But she was based in New York City and she had this huge bag with a lot of heavy product in it. And I, obviously offered to give her a sample. She said, Julie, honestly, I can't carry another pound. And I said to her, I said, hey, just knowing how big she was, if you are not in a rush to get all of the items in your bag, I am more than happy to throw some on the pallet back with me, and I can ship it to you along with my samples. And she was so beyond thrilled that I did that for her. And it really cost me nothing. I mean, I just packed up, instead of packing up 4 pounds of Slawsa, I packed up 12 pounds of her stuff and shipped it to her. And I could have shipped it directly from the show if she needed it immediately, but luckily she didn't. So I just threw it back on my pallet, got it back, sent it to her, sent her a nice little pic. She sent me a lovely thank you note. She said, Julie, we will be covering Slawsa in the future. She just the media has to find the right thing for it. So sometimes the media will find a great product, but they have to sit on it until they find the right spot for it. So don't ever get frustrated that they're not being responsive. It's just that the timing isn't necessarily right on their side. But yeah, anytime you can offer to do little nice things, that just puts you that much higher up on their list of people they do want to work with and they do want to promote.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. Similarly, if you have furniture in your booth, I've seen people chase people out that sit in their chair. It's like that. You don't know who that was. Could have been a key buyer or broker. I'm like, give them a cup of coffee while they're there. Be nice to everybody. And it's amazing how this pays off.
Doug, you have this story I know I've heard you tell about sending products to TV shows and how persistence can pay off and patience can pay off with that. Would you tell that story?
Sure. I normally title it, We Are Not a Big Enough Company to Do Guerrilla Marketing. So we do orangutan marketing and we do weird things. And what I've found over time is TV sets and movies, they can pay the star $1 million, but they can't buy their own groceries. So they call people like Julie and me and begging for stuff. And the set decorators, I've learned in 99% of the time, whatever they're working on is never going to be seen anyway. I'm probably feeding the cast, which is awesome because the cast is all future potential consumers. We're fortunate to have an item that everybody can enjoy and afford. So if they want 2 jars, I'll send 20. If they want 20, I'll send 200. And every once in a while, you get a massive payback. In the original Spy Kids film, which became a $100 million blockbuster, there's a scene where they open a cabinet, there's all these jars, the only branded jars, there's no label and fake label. The only branded jars are 2 Mrs. Renfro salsas, and they're prominent and facing the screen. I know what happened. It was an independent Austin film. Nobody had ever heard of the director. They probably didn't even pay the set director. They were probably a kid from UT, and they were like, knock yourself out. And so it became a $100 million blockbuster. We got great footage. I asked if we could be in the sequel. They said they'd be a $50,000 replacement fee, and we're not in the sequel. And then 10 years later, I sent products at the request of someone. I noticed the address was Warner Brothers, and I said, hey, I watch Big Bang Theory. And they mentioned that set decorator's a friend, send extras. I did. 8 months later, I never hear a word. I'm literally watching television with my wife and daughter, and there is our product behind Penny on the set of the Big Bang Theory. 5 shows in a row. It's in syndication. My grandchildren will be talking about this, and all it costs us is what, 20, 40 bucks for some UPS and being willing to do it.
Yep. And we've been featured on Big Bang Theory, Mike and Molly, and Two Broke Girls. And again, the Big Bang Theory, like you can see the jar right there sitting behind, and it is awesome. So yeah, take advantage of those little opportunities.
Amazing. I love it that you both have been on the same show. Incredible. Salsa and Slawsa. Here's a question that just came in. Is there anything you wish you had known when you were small and starting out that you know now?
How many?
What was it?
How many things?
Oh, give us a few.
Go ahead, Julie. I'm thinking.
Well, I feel like I'm still small. I may not be starting out as much, but I am still small. I guess in terms of the media, and that's what I'll speak to. I feel like I felt like in the beginning, I just had to get samples out to as many media as much as possible. And that wasn't necessarily the right way to do it. I think a more targeted approach and making sure I'm more timely in reaching out and making sure like I'm keeping my ears open. I'm constantly keeping my ears open. Like the little story I had with the Today Show is that in May, I heard like on the Today Show, this was probably like the 3rd hour, Al Roker, Dylan Dreyer, Natalie Morales, they were all talking about a recent study on the most popular condiments. And salsa was probably up at the top. But they kind of went around the table. What are your favorite condiments? And Dylan Dreyer said, I know y'all are going to think I'm weird, but I love relishes. And so that was on a Wednesday. I sent her a very short email with the subject line, the relish you'll relish for the rest of your life. And I said, hey, Dylan, FYI, you're going to get a package at your office on Friday. I'm 100% woman-owned small business. I'm sending you a relish that I hope will absolutely blow your mind. Thanks so much, Julie. That was the max of the email. I didn't like list a whole bunch of stuff, and I sent it to her literally about 2 hours after she would have gotten off air. So that would have been the time that she would have been in the office. Didn't hear anything from her, sent the package. It arrived on Friday. 1 month later, or maybe I guess this is in July for National Hot Dog Day, she whips out a jar on air and just starts gushing over it. And it was like, like a minute conversation between her and the group, and they all put on hot dogs. They all tasted it. Like that was a super focus. Now, again, I didn't get approval to, send product, but it was because it was based off of something that they said that I caught. So I am being much better now about catching things audibly, and then reacting on it anytime I feel like it has something. So I'm just much more aware of what media is talking about and what they need. And then again, some of the, more pertinent hot topics that are the trending and in the news right now. So anytime you can react on that, that's something that you just have to, that comes with more age, I guess.
Yeah. And speaking of things that come with age, I wish I had known probably that it's not personal. You're going to be told no most of the time, and they have a business reason for that. It's not that they don't like you or hate you or your product. And I would, you can take it personally and get semi-depressed. Just attack the reason, figure out what the reason was. And if it's the wrong season, if they don't take that sort of item, do your research, and you can eventually talk to that person again, say, hey, I understand the last time we spoke, you couldn't take the product because of X, Y, and Z. Here are reasons I think you'll like this one. And to Julie's point, always be listening, pay attention, remember their names, what we talked about. If they like cycling in Utah and you remember that 2 years later, it's huge because it shows you're treating them as a person, not just some contact. You're not trying to get the sale tomorrow and move on.
And follow on social media and engage. Don't over engage, but engage, and like posts, like articles. I will give you a little resource called Muckrack. Now, Muckrack does have a membership component to it, but you can basically write into a Google search Muckrack, Muckrack, one word, and then the journalist's name, and it will populate all of the articles that they have written in the last couple years. So you can read about what they're writing about, and then if something is maybe not your beat, but maybe it pertains to Doug, I'll let Doug know about it. Like, I think being an SFA member means being cohesive and supportive of each other, because when the tide rises, all ships do as well. So supporting those folks within the industry is a positive thing. Making sure the media are getting what they need, whether it's from you or from someone else. It's about building relationships. And I don't even know where I even started with that question, but that's where I ended up. But Muckrack is a great resource, because then you can always comment, oh, hey, I saw the article you wrote about blah, blah, blah. And then maybe here's something else to think about.
And if you haven't set up Google Alert for your brand, do that immediately.
Yeah.
We were notified that a fraternity in Michigan was using one of our products as a hazing tool. Not the best use, but it was good that we knew about it. And because if there's an article with your brand and you don't know about it, it can be sideways at a future show or an event, or it's heartwarming and you proceed to put it on Instagram and tell everybody else about it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're starting to wind down. I just wanted to do sort of a little quick fire here. I wanted to talk about getting ready for the show and then following up from the show. So is there anything that you feel that people might not think to pack for the show or to prep for the show as they're getting ready as a newbie? I know comfortable shoes are definitely a key one.
Yeah, I mean, I think a pitch sheet specific to media that you have in your booth and you can put down in the press office is a huge thing that people don't take advantage of. The other thing I think people don't take advantage of enough, maybe only half of the exhibitors do, is making sure that your listing is up to date. Like Doug mentioned, with all those keywords that could potentially drive people to the booth. If you don't have that updated, you're missing out on a lot of buyers.
Yeah, have the correct
Absolutely
contact,
true. The directory listing is
The
key.
directory listing.
I tend to think more at more a basic level. If it's your first show or early in, if you can't afford padding, ship a nice padded floor thing. It's amazing how much your knees and back can hurt when you've been a couch potato like most of us, working on your spreadsheets and things all day. And same thing once you start doing demos. It's remarkably exhausting to stand still for like 8 hours. So take something soft to stand on. As Gretchen said, pack shoes for the evening, shoes for the day, all the different weather aspects. And it can be ridiculously cold in a convention center hall when it's 100 outside. Bring all the layers and be ready to shed your skin. It's strange because you can't be as effective if you're uncomfortable and you're sitting there, complaining all the time about you being too hot or too cold. You get in a comfortable zone for you so you can do the best job that you can do.
Yeah. And I would say if you're kind of new to exhibiting at shows, dress for your brand. I think it's super important. If you're selling, a caviar, then yeah, you're probably wearing your heels and, a nice business suit. But if, you're more of a laid back brand like Doug and I have, then sneakers are okay, and just dress for your brand.
That's a great piece that I hadn't heard before. And I know a lot of people wear branded clothing too with their brand name on it. And I always love seeing those walking around because you always know who's walking past. Oh, we just had a late breaking question. Oh, bring snacks. One of the audience members is also suggesting. So yeah, as Doug said, that turkey sandwich, get some protein in you.
I've
is
started
key.
eating a Cliff Bar for lunch at some of the shows because I don't want to be gone when that key buyer comes in. I don't want to have a turkey sandwich hanging out of my mouth. So I have a really nice dinner, and I have a decent breakfast, and then a protein bar for 2 minutes behind the booth.
Yep, excellent point. And then just as we wrap up, so following up, so do you email, do you call, how often do you follow up on a hot lead?
I don't think it hurts on the retail side to ask buyers what their category review cycle is for that particular category, because I think it is important to follow up with immediately after the show with the samples that they've requested and details they've requested. But if they're not, if you know, you're at the winter show and they're not reviewing the that category until September or October, then you don't need to be reaching out to them every month between now and then asking. So it's not a bad question to ask what their category review cycle is for that category, to know when to reach out to them again. And again, media could be working on a deadline. They could be working on a longer timeline. So it doesn't hurt to ask questions.
And manage your life through Outlook events. I don't remember things. People think I do. It's like, no, I don't remember. Outlook does, because I can tell it a year and a half from now, 9 months from now, as Julie said. You're wasting their time if it's not category review time for the bigger people. And it's very impressive to them when you contact them right on time 7 months later, and also find out who their gatekeeper is. Or many times they want you to schedule it through an assistant buyer or someone, and it wouldn't hurt to give that person a little candy on their birthday. I'm just saying.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. So grateful to you both, Julie Buscha and Doug Renfro, for your time today and all of your wisdom from the many shows that you've both done. So grateful, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so don't hesitate to reach out to us, education@specialtyfood.com anytime. We can always reach out to Doug and Julie on your behalf as well. And please do attend the webinars on up until the Winter Fancy Food Show, and come back for our weekly webinar series. You can find all that info at learning.specialtyfood.com. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and hope to see you at the Winter Fancy Food Show in Las Vegas in January 2024.
Thanks.
Take care.